Okay, good evening. You know, as much as I can't get off the subject, quite frankly, about public education and just where our children are as a people. And I don't understand why we are not having that major conversation in regards to just where all children are. So I'm going to share the screen for a quick minute because I want to show you what my real concerns are about. And see if I can share it and then just for one moment. So, I don't know. Preferences. Let me see. Share screen. I don't know if I can actually share the screen during a live stream. We will definitely find out. Um, Other than that, because what I did was actually I filed a complaint with the Department of Education, and and I'll read it to you. It says, it was my understanding that the legislatures were looking at equity in Clark County and that Clark County School District was going through transition to address the access issues. But none of the questions that had to do with the maintenance of effort for African American students were even a part of the conversation. And I guess I was so concerned because they spent a lot of time attempting to address the at risk factor, or they were trying to change the definition of at risk. And it was concerning because the federal government already has a definition of at risk, actually. And so, what do we do? And what should we be looking at? And quite frankly, there's so much that we should be addressing right about this moment in time. And this moment in time is a historical, it's so historical because it's happening in our lifetime. We have seen the whole world just come almost to a standstill. And that's precedent. I mean, it's huge, it's epic. But now there are people out there protesting because they don't like not getting the money. And I think that we need to understand the people that are protesting are people who are working in local communities and providing public services. But we all need to understand that those public services were broken, especially for people who look like me. Because the public school system, I mean, I have to admit that there was nothing in no way that I could help change the direction of a family I was working with, because this parent had 5 children, 4 boys and 1 girl. And all of her children were below grade level. And she was a single parent. And that just demonstrates the level of dysfunction that's really happening now. And the inability to make a difference, for the most part, for her children until we got them out of that regular school environment and put her youngest two into a charter school, did they start making progress. Because her children I get it. Because guess what? My oldest children were not required to write a book report. They were not required to do the mission projects, the California Mission Project. But my youngest child, even though he had a disability, he was required to do that. The California Missions Project and the high school exit, whatever. All the students have to present a high school exit, whatever. I forget what it's called. But anyway, he did it. He did a presentation and he got graded, but he completed all of the work. And it was a valuable lesson to understand that every time we ran up into a roadblock that he wasn't getting it and he couldn't explain it to me, then I would call for a meeting, because meetings are important to talk about just what's going on in the educational process. Because see, there's a maintenance of effort that happens, but most people don't even understand public education. We just have a child and put them in public school, and then you got to work, you don't have time. And it's really for people who are lower income, it's really just how it all happens. You don't have time to be that kind of parent. But then we have to understand that there are people in our society who have been just gifted that because their family had money, and money is wonderful, because it allows you to be human. But then there are all of us, and I think we're all in the same boat here, really, with this epic pandemic, because it is epic. We're all in the same boat. Just a couple of months ago, they were talking about what they weren't willing to do for the homeless people. Oh, and it was so disgusting. And it was really hard to see and hard to understand that we had homeless vets out there on the street. And then you have to understand what they put on the line. They went to war for this country, and they put their lives on the line. And when they came back, the foundational support is not there for them. So they were fighting for what? I mean, seriously. We have to ask ourselves these questions. These questions that are just in our heads right now, because it's something else when you could just say whatever, and it doesn't make a difference. But we're trying to establish core values in our children. But then we have programs on television like Dexter, and that was the most dysfunctional program that I have ever seen. And I couldn't believe that was on TV. I just couldn't believe it. But then, sometimes you get tired of it. Every time you turn the channel, people are screwing. Come on now. Really? It makes you feel something's wrong with you if you're not out there doing the same thing. Opening yourself up. And then every few minutes, you have this gay guy coming on television here in Nevada, and he's talking about how he takes this medication that could make him seem undetectable. And I'm saying, damn, really? I mean, pushing medication to get you out there to screw around more, and maybe you won't get the disease. That's like, okay, this is some funny shit. I mean, these people are out here protesting, and people in healthcare, and people who are in law enforcement, and people who are putting their children at risk, and their families, their loved ones at risk, to ensure that what? That we can live. Because there are some people that weren't aware of the virus and just got it. But when people become just, what do you say? You can't explain it. I can't explain it. Oh no, I can. Let me break it down to you. You see, because public education didn't just get this funky overnight. It's been pretty bad for a long time, because I want to say 30 years ago, California was at the top of its game in educating all children. But then we went to that Brown versus the Board of Education. And when we had to integrate those services, well, we had to make sure that we still provide wonderful services for, the people who were there first. And it's always about the people who were in the house before you got there. And so we have people who were, how would you say it? Entitled. Just like, recently they came out with the scandal about how certain movie stars were paying for their children to go to certain universities for the prestige, or have it on their paperwork, right? I guess. I mean, but they paid to get in. I don't know if they were paying for grades, but they paid to get in. But if we understand just where we are in America, because there are children in public schools right now who were just there every day and not at grade level. So they weren't learning. It was all about their behavior. And people didn't mind documenting all those little dysfunctional things that disrupt the classroom, because it's difficult to manage 30 or 40 kids in a classroom at one time. And what's really difficult is that the data to demonstrate the maintenance of effort, that the purpose or the intent behind public schools is really happening. And it's not. I can't explain how we got to this point in America where the majority of children in the public school system are failing to thrive. And nobody, there's conversation, because there's a certain maintenance level that should be met. But it becomes amazing when you understand that, no, socially promoting children to the next grade level, and then every time they show up, they don't know what the hell they're doing. And you don't know what the hell they're doing either. You just know that you got to work and pay the bills and you got time. And, and I grew up during the time where my mom was probably going to beat me if I came home with a bad grade. And I did get some beatings growing up. And I can tell you, it's a dysfunctional thing in the Black family because education was so important that we all need to understand that our children are in the public school system. And if they're not learning, it's because they stopped learning at one point or another. Somewhere along the line, they didn't get it. But the school system is changed, so it just moves right on without you. And it just continues to go. So here we are. And we're talking about this coronavirus, this epic thing that happened, this God thing, because I see it as a God thing. And we're talking about this epic thing that's happened, and we don't have a way to address it. But we're willing to put ourselves at risk because what? We need to make money. Oh, for those who were out there making that money, providing those failed services for people who look like me, who for the children who are getting the letter grades of F. Understand, parents, this is your moment in life to figure out how we change the harvest. Because, simply across this nation, so many Black children were just considered an entitlement, basically. You don't understand entitlement or, I was trying to really understand what was going on because the teachers would show up and they get this little piece of paper and it have some check boxes. And the check boxes would say, now this is during an IEP. So this is the one that's supposed to be federally managed or monitored. There should be some maintenance of effort. They have different disabilities and they classify them differently. And then you are supposed to get services based on the classification. But the district got smart. So this is how they do it. Sharing the wealth. So all of the schools would get some disabled classrooms, fully disabled classrooms. And those classrooms would have a smaller number of children, maybe up to 10. Because the district can take federal dollars and provide that maintenance of effort. But what was happening in Sacramento when I figured that my son was in kindergarten or first grade or second grade is that they would buy the books, but then the children could not use them. They would stay in the plastic and then they would sell them. You see, when nobody's watching, shit like that happens. And that's just real. And then, it's all about how do we get around the rules? So, Edward Kimball and Cesar Chavez in Sacramento on 29th Street is 100% Title I school. And because of the area that the children live in, 100% Title I means that all the children in that school, upwards of sometimes 1,200 students on one city block, because it was a K-3 and a 4-6. And it was a city block, but it was divided by a fence and some bungalows, portables. And when it would get upwards of a large amount, of children, didn't have any more staff. It was the same amount of staff for the children, for the school sites that had 150 children. So they got the same amount of staff. Maybe they had more teachers because they had classrooms, but the amount of students were getting the same principal, the same, office clerk, the same cafeteria workers, just more people. And then what they did was, because there were so many people, they needed to show and document success. So they put a bilingual program inside. So a school within a school. And that school was open enrollment. So the children in that program on the same school site now would be in the program and their parents could apply for the program. And they would be dual immersion language students. And they would call that the baccalaureate program. And but those children didn't have to be poverty because, it was considered like a support program or a better opportunity for those children. But it's just the problem was not many children who lived in the area were taking the benefit of that program. And I can see this stuff all going out. I mean, it's not like it's the first time it happened in Sacramento. No. Hiram Johnson and Hiram Johnson West Campus, one school code, one school resource code. And that resource code represented all the children supposedly in one school. But there were children that were down the street around the corner, and they were in West Campus, and West Campus would only take the gifted students. And it was open enrollment, and all those children were applying all over citywide for that school, Hiram Johnson West Campus. But then Hiram Johnson was over there around the corner, and those kids were going to juvenile hall and dropping out. But guess what? That school was underperforming for so long. You know why? It was being rescued because the data from the children at the West Campus was propping the school up to stop it from going into receivership. You know what I mean? The data was combined basically in supporting the maintenance of effort. Basically, I don't, whatever. What can we say? Shit happens. And then you look at local districts and understand the ability of public school system to help sustain local communities because they have so many contractors. I mean, come on now. We are building buildings and permanent structures and temporary structures. And, all these people have jobs to help educate the public. And that's why I said this virus was a God thing because the public was suffering from the public services. You know what I'm saying? The public was just suffering from the public services. And what do we say about that? It's real. Truly, it's real. And there's just no way to get around what's happening in America simply because a pandemic is pestilence. It's the ultimate. But you have to know when you have knowledge that you've been blessed. And, this is a great time for organization and organizing our community, our local communities. It's not a Democrat thing or a Republican thing. You got me? It's just trying to figure out what is the meaning of living in America and being born in America and be respected for who you are. And understanding that this right here, what I'm doing, is a First Amendment right. And everybody has a right to be heard. Not ignored, but heard. Because when I go, they say, oh, well, you can go to the board meeting. You know what I'm saying? And when you get to the board meeting, share your concerns. Well, I have done that here. And I have went to the Nevada Department of Legislation, that one too. And, all I can say is that they don't pay you any attention. And then when they give you a place to look for the data, when you go push that data dashboard in Nevada and it comes up 0, no data in there. It's just an empty link. That's why I wanted to share it. I'll have to probably use video that shit so you can see that, first I'll let you read my concerns and then read the response to the district and then from the district and then click on the links. Because that's the funny part. Is it funny or is it just sad? I think it's sad because when people don't get a basic education, their whole lives are screwed. And then we incarcerate so many people and understand this pandemic thing is going to show exactly what's been happening. It's public information. It's how our tax allocations are being utilized. And understand when Microsoft, was, in the whatever, 80s or 90s, had bing, 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 human capital. And I said, that used to really, wear on me. I was thinking human capital. Then as the county jobs and the state jobs and the federal jobs start decreasing in the inability for all people to be competitive in ensuring that social services are functional, basically. Now we can see that social services are broken, basically. And the effect on now these people who have to depend on those social services, they're in food lines, and that's just real. They weren't prepared. But see, oppressed people, for the most part, were most people that I know were prepared, basically, and blessed, and are aware. I'm not trying to get sick. I'm not trying to, and I would just hate to think that 2 days, people are dying in 2 to 11 days. What could you have in order? And, when they said that they have those refrigerator trucks out there and bodies stacked in them and people were dying, 700 people in one day in one hospital, it's kind of hard to fathom. But then you have all these people where it hasn't hit them yet. So, boo you. You know what I'm saying? They're not concerned. It only takes one person, though, to be in your area. One person could spread that disease to a million people. And we have no concern. I mean, the divisiveness of a divider. So, I look at our current president as the national divider because he was on both sides of the question when that young woman, although she was at a rally that was lobbying for African American rights, I thought, got ran over and ran down by a young white male and took her life. But then we see how people's lives are being taken and just not valued. And I'm still trying to understand. When we were forced to say that Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, to the United States of America, and to the Republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, instead of it just no justice for just us. Because we were formerly enslaved in America, I guess. I don't know how I should take this. Truly, I understand freedom. That's why I'm here. I understand that, my experience in my lifetime truly has been unique. And I have had the ability to work with a student who was gifted in gate, as they call it, GT. That meeting that I went to that had to do with the Commission on School funding here, whatever. They're trying to get a baseline, but they want a new definition for at-risk. Hear me when I say at-risk is free and reduced lunch and kids in poverty. And the intent, I thought, behind the federal support for local schools was to ensure that you could meet the needs of those children who are identified as children in poverty or special needs or bilingual, or, we'll give you some extra money, the federal government says, because, we want to give your states back some money. Well, when they take the money back and they do nothing for you, what should we say? And you never show up. See, the one thing about Black people in America, what I've found is that entertainers and entertainers and people who have some knowledge, socialize a certain social stream. And then poor people, well, they kind of socialize, but they're clueless and they don't know how to get resources, and shit just kind of doesn't happen for them. It's just difficult. But is it the poverty or is it the ignorance? It's sad to say. It's the ignorance. How do you deal with it when someone has enough money to sustain themselves, yet has let their identification lapse and no birth certificate and none of their records to prove who they are, and they can't access their resources because it's just not happening for them. And they don't have a way to figure out, well, what do you do? Because they don't know how to get a new birth certificate. They don't know how to get online and how to request, any documents, or they don't have a bank account, or, there's a lot of people that function without what I consider is natural amenities like debit card and money in the bank and a car and, food stacked up in the cabinet and whatever. But we have to understand that there was a a TV series called Revolution, and it was amazing. But all the power went off across America, which meant there were no water and no electricity, no, nothing. And people would start to migrate, and they lived outside the houses because the houses couldn't sustain them because they had nothing in the house to. But, this is America. It was a bleak thought, but then that children of man, it was all about, a pandemic. It had happened and nobody could have a child. And, all this stuff in the movies. I try not to relate a lot of my life to the movie because I can't seem to see how my life is related to anybody in those movies. I tried to really, find good people to mate with, and it's unfortunate that 1, 2, 3, you need to know when you're out, and you just stop. And I had 3 attempts, and now, I stopped, but I raised my sons. And each time God would give me another child, another son child, another man child. But guess what? Those men that I had chosen for whatever reason weren't stronger than I was. I guess I was stronger because I couldn't handle that. And my middle child's father is deceased. He had a unique life. God was not kind to him, but he was not kind to me. And he was not a good parent. You have to, anybody can make a baby, but not everybody is a good parent. Because parenting requires that you sacrifice something of you to ensure that your child doesn't have to struggle like you did. And then you need to ensure that the pathways are open for your child so that they can be successful. And you need to understand what success is, and you need to understand sustainability and resources and ensuring that access happens, because it's the basic fundamental skills. It's the basic skills. You got to be reading by grade 3. And if your child's not reading by grade level 3, well, what are you going to do about it? Because, that's how they're building the prison beds. And everybody should be alarmed about that, about the number of people who are in prison and the number of young people who are homeless and the number of, the broken system, especially because people want to protest and break the system some more because they can't get access to the money. And simply, when you see a young white person in the bank, and I hate to be a little about it, but quite frankly, I'm real about it. They have a check for like $3,000 and $4,000, and they're working at the school district over children who look like you, and the children are not benefiting. And what should I say? Should I say I'm elated about the public school system and the effect on the Black community? I'm not. I'm just totally pissed off, and I'm more dismayed simply because I had hoped that, with all of the social integration and engineering that's happening online right now, that we could somehow come together as a people, my people. I see Snoop, I watch him live. Right now, Monique, I love that woman. She's trying to share a little bit and give back, but, God gave them a gift. And with their gift, they are managing their families. And God gave them that special gift and enabled them to take care of their families. But who said that they were the ones that were the leaders in the community? People can only share what they have, and they only get what they're willing to challenge themselves. And it's called trials and tribulations. Learn the lesson so that you can share the lesson. And if you ain't got nothing to share, I don't know what you're out here doing. Because there are a lot of people that are out here talking, and it's the cruelty of tearing people down. It's cruel. It's just mean. But quite frankly, people are talking about me all my whole life, and guess what? I just don't give a damn. What can I say? I should care? No, I don't. My mother taught me a long time ago that if it did not affect my livelihood, then I shouldn't have to worry about it. Oh, hot flash. I think that, I know I know that I'm totally dismayed, and what can I say? Now's the time for parents and families to step up their game. There are all kind of resources out there on the net. And should I say we should just trust that somehow the public education system is going to get to you? Well, guess what? We heard it, right? I think I heard it on the news that they were selecting people who had a better chance of making it. And it's unfortunate that the health circumstances of most African Americans would put them at risk of death. But they were willing to. I mean, when they have the ventilator, do you think it's going to be you? Do you think they're going to check? Oh, no. That's why you don't need to be running around out there with no mask and no PPE. I said, oh, PPE, PPE. There's lack of PPE. What is PPE? And then you say, oh, personal protection equipment. And, I see young Black people and they're walking and they're touching everything and everybody else is touching everything. And I'm saying, ooh. But then, I have to go behind them. And then when they're giving their money to the cashier, and then, you're taking that, but you're taking it, putting it back on you. You have to understand that I don't know how this virus travels, but it is traveling. And people are dying, and people have always died. And should we be alarmed? Because people have always died from the flu. I think it's that so many people have weakened immune systems, and then they're saying that perhaps this 5G has a lot to do with it. But guess what? Because we don't know we don't know what is causing it, and we're not gods. And you know what? When I say it's a God thing, or it's an epic thing, or it's a universal thing, I'm saying that guess what? It's not controllable. Because if it was controllable and they could control it, don't you think they would have did that? Instead of closing the businesses, they're making that money on you. I mean, the harvest is real. American people are the harvest. We were the ones who were paying the taxes. We were the ones who were making it happen. And because the effect on the oppression in America, it's happened for Black people. And quite frankly, we need to get a clue. Truly. I said I could go live anytime and I don't have to have followers, but I should. I should have people that I can engage with that think somewhere along the lines of me. But, it's difficult to even meet people who I can have a conversation with because there are not a lot of people who think like I do. I don't know what they think. Honestly, I don't. I don't know that they think about anything because I haven't. Just because you see the effect of the inability for Black children to be successful in environments of public services. It's not happening everywhere. There are some children that are being very, very successful because they have the exposure early in life and learn how to do the basic skills. We're just as competitive people as any other race. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't intelligent. So I consider myself very intelligent. But when we look at the fear and the reality of the impact of being alert and awakened and knowing that we listen to, just listen, just think about it. Even our entertainers, the ones who decide to take a voice or a stand, aren't here long. Look at, it's not so much, but it's just the message that they were sending during the time that they ended their lives. It's concerning. You know what I'm saying? You can't say, I'm not some kind of thinking that, that it's just everything is criminal. But the possibility of everything being criminal is really a possibility. We just don't know. And you don't know what you don't know. And that's just real. But what we do know, we don't talk about. So we understand where we are in America in regards to access to public education. And we know that, that 5 o'clock hour is real across the nation when young African American children are hanging out, that they were running them down because they had to be up to no good, right? Yeah, up to no good. Understand that this is the harvest And we now know that we have a personal responsibility to kind of like figure it out. Find programs of engagement with your children that they can benefit from. Get access to technology. Pay the bill. Don't be foolish and use your money to not pay your rent. Or, I could leave, you could leave the utilities, but make sure the rent and the things that you need, that you value, that you maintain those resources during this time. That should be the most important thing. Get you some staple food, beans and rice. If you don't get anything else, you can survive on that. But understand, this is not a game. This is not going to get over. It's not going to be over anytime soon. There's just no way. Because of the things that were happening all around us. We did see elderly on the street and homeless. We knew that they had no way back. And we knew that our public service providers, although we had elected officials that were supposed to be representing the community, could not figure out what to do to create a process in which those people could come back to functional lives. And, and then the resources just became to be like a handout, because the resources basically trapped you in a certain standard of living because you couldn't make a few dollars more, because you could lose everything, or you could just not qualify. It's really difficult to have to be dependent on the system, but things happen, and so it is what it is. But right now, I'm going to keep coming back and talking about, real life issues. This is really, we were just about here in Las Vegas to go through a Black Leadership Summit. And, that was just, I was trying to figure it out. Because on my page, I recorded that workshop, and other people recorded it too. But it was just conversation about where are we as a people? And, I really want to know, why is it that there is no, why the Moulin Rouge never came back, and why the Cotton Club, it doesn't exist anymore, and why here in Las Vegas, the entertainment capital of the world, and the Black people who are major entertainers, who draw the crowds here, who are gifted, and who, we can celebrate them, because once they made it, like Snoop and, Drake, and you could just Gladys Knight and Diana Ross and, Smokey Robinson. Come on now. We're talking about America and all those Black entertainers. And then we have the Raiders, and how many Black men are on the Raiders team? Okay, well, we knew chocolate was coming to Vegas. But the real deal is that, their families were going to come too. And their families are going to be here. But the resources here and the public schools here are very, very, not working, not functional. So I don't see Black people running back to brick and mortar schools once they figure out that they were being kicked out and never had an opportunity. And they could stop apologizing for failing, because their structural family life just caused chaos and you couldn't get to school. Time became a factor. And that's why they want to lean on the factor of time, truancy, and absenteeism as being a factor, and not being able to be successful, in school, as if that really made a difference. I would say, being there and showing up is important, because you need to get the task and you need to learn how to complete the task. But if you're there and you're not learning the task, is showing up really so important? Come on now. Somebody needs to help me with that. The mandatory attendance is compulsory in nature, because we all pay taxes. But the return on investment is what I'm concerned about. The return on the investment for the people in poverty, and the amount of dollars that are being utilized to help support, supposedly, these at-risk students. And then there's no maintenance of effort, no demonstration of the annual, yearly progress. It's just not happening. It's just not when you have 80% incarceration rate up there in juvenile hall, wherever they have it up there in the hill. And, there are children up there, but children that never had an opportunity because social promotion is just real. The family that I was helping, I mean, I seen it. I understand it. I mean, if you go to, I can honestly say, if you go to the Office of Administrative Hearings in the state of California, there was a case that I was involved in, Darlene Anderson. Just search it, and then look at the case because it's all public information. But I understand that child wasn't doing more than third grade reading, second and third grade reading, and the testimony from the teacher is that, well, he had a disability, so that was something to be expected. Really? It's not true. My child had a disability. He graduated at grade level and above proficient, actually. So the ability to learn has nothing to do with, it has to do with the maintenance of effort. It has to do with the opportunity. It has to do with just what the intent behind public education is. Excuse me. But it's not happening. It's not happening, and I'll tell you why. Because who's overseeing the pot? In the 80s, they voted that people would oversee public services. And I could tell the story, and I think it's just so frustrating and just confusing simply because people just ignore the fact. So, the superintendent and the mayor and the governor, well, the mayor is not addressing the failure, but the governor recognizes that there are so many children that don't have access to any technology, no Wi-Fi, no Chromebooks. But what they need to really understand is that those children didn't have access to anything prior to this virus. So, the maintenance of effort and what are they going to select to be a teaching tool? And how are they going to assess the effectiveness of their teaching? Because they weren't assessing the effectiveness of the use of the funds in the first place, meaning that failure was just being allowed to happen for some folk. And nothing could change it. I mean, nothing except for God. Or if you don't believe in God, then okay, Mr. Universe or whatever you want to call it. I'm saying that it happened, right? So we're in a better position, right? We are, but only if we accept the personal responsibility to get out there and handle what we have to handle to ensure that it really happens. Well, I think I'm going to sign off right now. I've been on here almost 43 minutes. It's a long time talking, but I'm going to do another video because I have to record what I want to share because I can't share the screen while I'm live. And that's just real. So until the next time, I'll say subscribe on my channel, Darlene Anderson. Subscribe, and then follow me on Facebook because I have that public education channel, the one that, describes my fears from so long ago. It was saying, really the reality is public education is a local issue. So will it be prison or independence for Black people? And, the question is real. What will it be? How are we going to address the needs of the children in America when we've allowed a certain population to just falter and just, but we already know we have so many gifted Black people. Black people have arrived. We have doctors, we have lawyers, we have nurses, we're out there doing the thing, right? Participating like Americans, and we have elected officials, and most of the Black people that are in Congress that are chairing committees now. John Conyers was a wonderful. Go look at it, listen to him. He was an intelligent man, but I'm sure everybody has little weak things. But but what they did to him was wrong because it was just wrong because it was a lot of perceptual things from someone else's perspective that probably didn't go down that way. But because everybody was in the salacious lies, people get away with, I'm going to write a book and, they're going to set their retirement up, right? Put that salacious, all those juicy, tantalizing tidbits in the book and make some money. Because what is it? Reading is fundamental. But if you're reading things that are just, people put a spin on shit just to make it work. I can't put a spin on this because the data is real. But people have to realize that they have to be involved and engaged in the safety of their children. And it's a public safety issue to ensure that access happens. So, signing off for right now. Gonna do another video and stay up a little bit later just so I can address some other things. But right now, until tomorrow, like I said, follow me on my same times. I'm not going to say that same bat time, same bat station. Oh, yeah. All that stuff is crammed in my head because I watched too much TV growing up. But I also read a lot and, figured out how to stay online and figured out how to reboot my system when the network administrator would take it offline. It became a game. I said, I put on my name. I named my hard drive FU. And then they said, we see you. I knew they saw me. Okay. We see you. That's what they named my folder. It was a joke, but it wasn't. It's reality that we all need to understand. We're living in a different time. Every day I get a new set of pictures in a movie kind of scene from Google because they like my pictures, I guess. I like my pictures too. Well, anyways, for now, we're going to end the stream and I'll put together something for you. It'll be informational. Stay tuned.